Welcome everyone to this webinar. We just opened it, so we're now waiting a few minutes for everyone to join the webinar, and then we'll start. See, there are still people entering this session, so we'll just give it a few moments before we'll start the session. Well, let me just introduce this webinar to you. Welcome everyone to this Fscc Insights webinar. My name is Samantha and I'm Fssc's Communication Manager, and during this session I'll be your host. Today we're going to talk about Fssc 22000. What is it exactly and how can it benefit you? And it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, which are Else Mati, the Fssc Technical Director, and Cor Groenveld, the Fssc Market Development Director. But before we start, there are a few practicalities. This webinar is being recorded. And now, oh, here we go. This webinar is being recorded, and later this week, everyone who has registered for this webinar will receive an email with both the recording and the presentation and a bit of additional information. We also have our next webinar scheduled already that will take place on 7 July and is dedicated to the topic of food fraud. As you notice, you are all muted. That is because we expect quite a group of participants today. So please use the Q&A functionality for questions. After the presentation, we will dedicate a time slot to answering your questions. You can find this Q&A functionality next to the chat functionality. So Q&A for questions, please. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, Cor will start his presentation with introducing the foundation and explaining a few of the benefits Fssc 22000 brings. Then we have Else, who will take over and talk about the more technical side of Fssc 22000, implementing Fssc 22000 and the Fssc Integrity Program. Then Cor will finish this presentation with explaining the benefits of Fssc 22000 and the Fssc 22000 additional solutions. And when the presentations are done, we will dedicate a time slot to answering your questions. So enough from my side. Cor, the floor is yours. Please take over.
I will. Thank you so much, Samantha. Great introduction. Thank you so much for this clear start of the webinar. And also from my side to everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think we have participants from all over the world again, just like we did a session this morning. And I'm very happy that you participate in this webinar, that you take the time to be here and to listen to us. And we will try to give you more insights on Fssc, and hope it's value for you to use in your daily practice. I like to start with an introduction of our foundation. The foundation is the organization that owns Fssc 22000. And some typical characteristics of the foundation is, first of all, and I think that is important to mention, that we are a truly independent and non-profit owner. So the foundation is independent. That means no other stakeholders, no other organizations telling the foundation what to do. The only thing we do, of course, is talk very closely with our partners and with our users to make sure that we are continuously improving. But also non-profit. And that means that we try to keep the cost as low as possible, and there is no any money going out of the foundation. We also ensure that we keep the fees as low as possible, the fees for the certified organizations, but also the fees for the certification bodies. We try to support the food supply chain in the best way with less costs and less fees that are necessary. What is also important is that we use ISO standards, and we believe that the ISO management system standards are very strong in building an effective food safety management system. And that's also what we do, and that is also typical, I think, from Fscc 22000, that we use the ISO 22000 for food safety management systems, and also the technical specifications for the prerequisite programs. And then what we also find important is the sustainable development goals. We believe that creating a better world is also one of the things that we want to support too. And we also do that by being very collaborative with our partners and users. We like to work together with everyone to continuously improve ourselves, but also having a lean organization, being effective and collaborating very closely internally to be the best way in supporting you as our partner or user. So if you look at this picture, we call this the Fscc house of the foundation. It explains, I think, very well how we look at our organization and outside. First of all, you have the foundation of the house. You need a strong foundation, otherwise, your house will not survive. But we have some values there, very important: transparency, integrity, ambition, engagement, and care. And we believe that these values are important. So everyone working for Fscc or working with Fscc should witness that we care very much about these values, and we implement them also in practice. Then we have three pillars, as we call them. First pillar are the schemes. And at the moment, obviously, that is Fscc 22000 for food safety management systems. But you see also Fscc more to come, and that is an interesting one. That is not a new scheme, no, but we are looking also how we can further support the food supply chain with perhaps other initiatives. And one of them we are looking at the moment is social management systems. That is very important, and we are looking at that at the moment, and we might come also with some activities in that area, but later more to tell about that later in this year. But we think that of course food safety is most important in producing food products, but on the other side there are other risk areas, and with management systems you can cover also other risk areas, and that's why we think we might also be play a good role in supporting organizations with that. Then the pillar assurance, of course, very important to ensure reliable certification and reliable audits. And therefore, we work very closely with the accreditation bodies around the world, but of course also with our partners, the certification bodies and the training organizations. And we have a very strong integrity program. Also, we will tell more about that to ensure that the quality of the audits and the certificates are on the highest level. That is for us the utmost important. And then the third one is improvement, and you cannot do without it. You know that we need to do continuously improvement, and therefore we are working now on using the large amount of data we have in our database coming from the audits, and that data can also be very valuable to learn from it. You can imagine that we have now more than 29,000 certified organizations, and every year there's an audit. And if non-conformities are found, you can learn from those non-conformities. So we will also continuously look at how can we use that data in a way that we can also support as well certification bodies, but also, of course, the certified organizations to continuously improve in their systems. And we also have our development program. I will tell a little bit more about that. That is for small, medium enterprises. And we are working on training modules and training available. That all leads to the roof, as you can see in the house. And that is trying to do our bit in creating a better world. I think that is what we like to do. looking at the whole world, of course, a small contribution, but in the field of food safety and also, yeah, food security, making sure that food is available. Let's not forget that. I think Fssc and you with us can play a very important role. So if you look then at the team, we have, of course, an organization with a technical department, with integrity department, with IT, so all kinds of different disciplines. But these are the people that work for us around the world. So we call them the market development team, and these are the local representatives that you can also contact when you want to have information. So when you're in North America, you can contact Jacqueline. In China, we have Liu. In Japan, we have Yukawa-san. Then you see also Adrian from Latin America, Smita from India, and DV Darshain. He is our big advisor for South Asia. So that is what we call our team of representatives that are also there to support you when you have any questions or you need any support. You can find the contact details of them on our website. So why should you choose for Fscc 22000? Well, I think this is a good moment, Samantha, to do a poll, because I think we like to know a little bit more about our audience. So please, you can initiate the poll now.
Sure, Cor, here it goes. So the question, which should pop up on your screen now, is your organization Fscc 22000 certified? There are 3 answer options, and I see people answering already. So it's or yes or no, but my organization holds another food safety certification, or no, we are not certified.
I see a lot of people answering, so that's very interesting.
See, you know what I also see, Cor, is that around 50% says yes.
We are certified for
yes.
Fscc. Yeah.
Yes, we are Fscc 22000 certified. That's comparable to the previous
this morning.
Yes, this morning session, at least.
But we see more, I think, organizations that are not certified at all. That's 30%. So I think that's also interesting information.
Let me share the results so everyone can see them. We have 51% who voted yes, and we have 18% who voted no, but my organization holds another food safety certification, and we have 31% which says no, we are not certified.
Great, and then I hope that, of course, we in this webinar can give you some support in your journey. So I like to continue. So if you look at the question that I put on the screen, why should you choose for Fscc 22000? Well, first of all, I think most important is that is also what we receive back from the users. It is a framework for a food safety management system. But not only just the food safety management system, a robust one and a very effective one. And that comes mainly, I think, also through the ISO standards. The ISO standards for management systems, the ISO 22000, but you also, probably the ISO 9000 for quality QMS, for quality management systems, the 14001 for environment, etc. Yeah, they have the same structure. And we believe that was a great initiative from ISO. All those management system standards are now organized through the harmonized structure. And that means if you look at the general requirements for the management system, they are the same in each of these standards. And that makes it also very easy, or much easier, to have an integrated management system, an IMS. And we see more and more organizations, and not only in the food, because the ISO standards can be used also in other sectors, so in the automotive sector or the chemical sector, we see more and more organizations that move to that integrated management system approach. And we believe that that is an interesting development, also interesting for the food supply chain. ISO standards are science-based, independent. ISO is an independent organization. They use international experts, and they also have been seen as very reliable. Not only the food organizations use them, but also they are accepted by a lot of other stakeholders. So if you look at governments, in a lot of countries, they also are positive about ISO standards being independent, reliable standards. Also, what is important is that Fscc 22000 has a recognition from the Global Food Safety Initiative. And that is, I think, the largest organization where there's a collaboration between all kinds of industry sectors, but also stakeholders of the food supply chain, including the retailers and the manufacturers, but also other organizations. And they have a benchmark, a recognition program for certification schemes. And we are one of the recognized schemes. And that means that many organizations accept Fscc 22000 as a certificate from their suppliers. And that is important, of course, also for you if you want to do business with other organizations. The integrity program, and LCB will go more into that, but very important to ensure reliable audits and certification. And I think also typical is the technical specifications we have for prerequisite programs. And again, LCB will explain more, but for the different sectors in our scope, they can use Fscc. There are, for each of these sectors, a dedicated technical specification covering the requirements for prerequisite programs. And again, that ensures that you have a very robust system in place for your prerequisite programs if you meet those technical specifications. So these are a number of reasons to choose for Fscc 22000. The next picture is our infographic. It shows a lot of information. I will not go through everything. You will receive the presentation, and this is also downloadable on our website. But in general, if you look at the left side, it goes a little bit fast. I don't know how that can happen. I go back. Yeah, it works. Sorry for that. I have to talk faster. I think this was a signal. But if you look at the left side, you see our partners, the certification bodies, the training organizations, and the accreditation bodies. Very important for us. That's why we call them partners. And you also see that we have now even more than 29,000 certificates. So that's a very high number of certificates. And yeah, we are only 12 years young, if you look at the picture on the bottom. Talking about these numbers, what I always say, it's absolutely good when you see that you grow, because that means that organizations appreciate Fscc 22000 and want to use it, that it's helpful for them. That is a good indicator. But for us, growth is absolutely not most important. Quality before quantity. That is a very important principle. We rather have the best quality and the best reliable scheme than that we grow fast. And that also fits in our non-profit foundation approach. We really want to ensure that the quality of our scheme is on the highest level. On the right side, you see the scope of Fscc. So you see the different sectors. And also you see that we have that development program for small, medium enterprises. And I think that is a very strong tool we have. We don't want to be there only for the larger organizations that are able to meet Fscc 22000 in one step. But there are also many small, medium enterprises that we find very, very important in ensuring safe and securing food in the world. We also want to support them. So this program is even, we don't charge any fee for those organizations when they use it. I can tell more about it, but you find more details on our website. And we believe that this helps organizations to have a journey to Fscc 22000 in 2 or 3 steps. On the left side, on the bottom, you see also in the small letters, you see that we have a board of stakeholders. Very important. The board of stakeholders, they are responsible for the governance and also for the content of the scheme. They take the end decisions. And if you look at their website, you see their names and organizations, but they are representatives from the food industry, from the food supply chain, and not only the retailers and the manufacturers, but also some other organizations are involved, like representatives of certification bodies, etc. So again, that is how we work together with the food supply chain. And we have an advisory committee that helps us, also members from the food supply chain. When we have changes or we have new developments, the advisory committee supports us reviewing those changes or new developments. So I think in a nutshell, this shows what Fscc status at the moment, but also it shows you, I hope, how we work and collaborate with different stakeholders in the food supply chain. So again, the scope, I told you already, it is almost the whole food supply chain. You see here the different sectors that can use Fscc 22000. It's from farm to fork, and this morning we had also many participants from Asia, perhaps now too. So then I say from farm to chopstick, but it's not covering all the sectors, but most of them are covered. And we continuously look at the market request, the market need for Fscc 22000, and when there is a market need in other sectors, then we are always open to look into that to see if we can extend the scope. But these are the main activities we believe in the food supply chain that we cover at the moment. So I think now I like to hand over to Fsse, because now we come to the more difficult part, Fsse, of this presentation. And I'm so happy that you are here, that you can do this for me. So please go ahead, Fsse.
Thank you, Cor, and welcome everyone to our webinar today. To start off this part of the session, we will show a short video that shows you how to achieve Fscc 22000 certification. So Sam, if you can please assist us and play the video.
Fscc 22000 is a complete certification scheme for food safety and quality management systems. To achieve certification, there are a few steps to follow. Visit our website and download the requirements that are necessary for your company to obtain Fscc 22000 certification. Complete your company's self-assessment against the Fscc 22000 scheme requirements and find out if your company is able to achieve certification. When you are ready to obtain Fscc 22000 certification, select the licensed certification body of your choice in our online database. The certification body reviews if your management system meets all Fscc 22000 scheme requirements. If you meet the requirements for certification, the CB auditor will complete the audit. If the audit is completed successfully, the CB will hand out the Fscc 22000 certificate to your company. Your certificate is valid for 3 years, during which your CB will re-audit you annually. Fscc 22000, ensuring consumer trust in the supply of safe food and drinks.
Great, thank you, Sam. I hope you found that useful. It's a little bit of background in terms of the process. So now we will start having a look in more detail in terms of how does the scheme work and how do you implement the Fscc 22000 scheme requirements. Now, a very typical question we receive is, where do I find the Fscc scheme requirements? Now, as it was said in the video as well, you can go and have a look on our website, and these documents are available as a free download and also in several languages. And this slide, I know is very busy, but you will also receive the presentations afterwards, so you can have a look at it in more detail. But what I would like to highlight is that when you look at the scheme documents, it consists of various components. So it starts off with the main scheme. Then there are various appendices and annexes, and we also have a board of stakeholder decision list. Now, when we look at the main scheme, you will see there are 6 parts, where part 1 focuses on the overview and provides an introduction. Part 2 is the requirements, and these are specific requirements for organizations who are audited to Fscc 22000. So very important from an organization perspective to take note of part 2 of the scheme documents. Then part 3 and part 4 focuses on the certification process and the requirements for certification bodies. Part 5 sets out the requirements for accreditation bodies, and part 6 those for training organizations. And then, as I said, there are various appendices and annexes. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there. But what I would like to point out is, for example, if you look at Annex 1, it contains specific requirements for CBs in terms of how to write a scope statement, or what is allowed in terms of a scope statement on a certificate. Annex 2 sets out the requirements for an audit report template for Fssc. So what is the minimum content, but also what is the minimum level of detail we require in each of the summary sections. And then Annex 9, for instance, has CB requirements on the use of ICT, which is information and communication technology. And that is, how can you use these online tools or remote tools during an audit? And then, as Cor has mentioned in his part of the presentation, we also have a board of stakeholders. Now, the board of stakeholders have to approve any changes we make to the scheme requirements. Now, if we are all very lucky, there are no changes and we don't have to make any updates. But during the normal course of a version, it sometimes happens that we need to introduce a new requirement, or maybe we have to strengthen an existing requirement. And for that, we then use the board of stakeholder decision list. Now, it's important to note that the decisions are mandatory decisions, and it has specific implementation timelines. And these decisions then overall all provide clarification on the existing scheme rules, and they have to be implemented within the timelines as defined. So, as I said, this list is dynamic. So it's important that you keep an eye out for the BOSS decision list, which is also displayed on our website. And we do also provide notifications and updates to our licensed partners whenever there is a change to the Board of Stakeholder decision list. And then when we look at what is it that organizations actually need when they want to start implementing Fssc, what is Fssc 22000 based upon? So the structure of the scheme is based on three main components. So you'll see ISO 22000, and ISO 22000 is fully applied within Fssc 22000. Then you have the sector-specific PRPs, and this refers to technical specifications. So it defines specific requirements for prerequisite programs linked to a specific sector. And then we have the Fscc additional requirements. And this is in the previous slide where I referred to part 2 of the scheme. This is the additional requirements on top of ISO 22000 and the sector-specific PRP that an organization needs to comply with and that they will be audited to. Now, the reason for these additional requirements is to ensure consistency and integrity, to provide governance, but it's also a means for us to be agile and to address emerging food safety issues. During the COVID pandemic, not that it's over, but when it was starting and at its peak, it also allowed us to introduce new requirements on how to use blended audits, how to use full remote audits. So this is a very valuable tool for us if we need to make changes in the short term. And now we will spend a little bit of time on each of the three components. So ISO 22000, as Cor has mentioned, is a food safety management system standard. It is applicable across the whole food supply chain, and it is based on the management system approach. Now, Cor also mentioned this management system approach, and this is something that makes Fssc unique in food safety certification. Because this FSMS, or Food Safety Management System approach, is built on the ISO harmonized structure. Now, what that means in layman's terms is that for the main ISO standards, the structure of the standards are the same. So the layout, the numbering is similar, and that allows and facilitates integrated management system auditing as well as combined audits. It also makes it easier for organizations who already maybe have ISO 9001 certification and also want to do Fssc 22000. It's easier to combine the two and to do an integrated audit. Another key element of ISO 22000 is that it is a risk-based approach, but also that it has a focus on continuous improvement. So those of you who are familiar with ISO terminology, is the continuous improvement focuses on the plan, do, check, act cycle, and how do you make sure that if you have a correction in your system, that you make that you do a proper root cause analysis and that you prevent reoccurrence, but with the drive of continuing improvement. And then quite obvious, I think, is because it is an ISO standard, it is an international standard and therefore also internationally accepted. The other thing about ISO 22000 is that it is fully covered within Fssc 22000. So when you receive your Fssc 22000 certificate, ISO 22000 will be listed specifically as a normative document. Then when we look at the sector-specific PRPs, I think it's also important to highlight that in ISO 22000, there is a clause requirement on PRPs, but it is fairly generic. It does refer to that the organization can, on a voluntary basis, implement the specific Isotechnical specifications, but it is not a mandatory requirement in ISO 22000. When you go for Fscc 22000, that is one of the main differences as well, is we mandate the use of specific technical specifications linked to a sector. And on this slide, it gives you an overview of the existing Isotechnical specifications that we use. And you will see there are 6 different ones. And in some cases, we have sectors where there are no Isotechnical specifications available yet. In that case, we rely on publicly available standards. For example, when you look at the prerequisite programs for retail and wholesale, we use the PAS 221. Now, all of the ISO documents you have to obtain from the ISO website. But what I would also like to point out when we look at the technical specifications is that the scope of the organization and the scope of certification is very important. And sometimes you might only need one technical specifications, but in other cases you might need more than one. So for example, if you have a company that produces and bottles beverages, this would be prerequisites for food manufacturing, and the Isotechnical specification 22002 Part 1 would apply. If you have the same company that produces and bottles the beverages, but they also produce the bottles on site, then the prerequisites for food packaging manufacturing will also apply. So in this case, when that company is being audited, they will have to meet the requirements of ISO 22000, the Isotechnical specification Part 1, the Isotechnical specification Part 4, as well as the Fscc additional requirements, which we will look at next. So when we look at the Fscc additional requirements, as I mentioned before, this is defined in Part 2 of our scheme documents, and specifically, oh, sorry, my screen is moving. And specifically in Chapter 2.5. And you will see that there are quite a number of additional requirements. But what I would like to point out is that not all of these requirements necessarily apply to every organization. So when you look at the requirement, and let's look at number 3, food defense, for example, you will see there's no categories indicated next to it, which means that food defense, the requirement in Part 2, applies to all organizations for Fscc. But then when we look at number 7, for example, where you have environmental monitoring, it only applies to categories C, which is food manufacturing, I, which is packaging, and K for the production of biochemicals. So when we look at the scope, this emphasizes the importance of that, because the scope determines which of these categories apply to your organizations and what you will be audited to, but also which PRP standard you will be audited to. Now you might ask, why do we need to have these Fssc additional requirements? They mostly come from our GFSI benchmarking, where in some cases they have more specific requirements than what is defined in ISO 22000. It is also a place, as I mentioned before, for us to emphasize or to introduce requirements we feel strongly about, that we want to introduce new topics to, or we want to strengthen existing requirements. So make sure that if you are an organization wanting to implement Fssc 22000, that you also remember to have a look at part 2 of the scheme documents. Now, the next bit that I would also like to talk about briefly, and that's also a very distinguishing factor for us, is the 3-year certification cycle. Now, as you probably know, Fssc, a successful Fssc audit results in a 3-year certificate. It starts off with an initial audit, and that's a 2-part audit, which consists of a stage 1 and a stage 2 audit. And following a successful stage 2 audit, a new 3-year certificate is issued. And this is then also the start of your 3-year cycle. In the first year after your initial audit, you will have your first surveillance audit. And in the second year after that, your second surveillance audit. And then in the third year, you have a recertification audit. And this audit needs to be done in time before your certificate expires. So typically, CVs would do this 2 to 3 months before the expiry date of the current certificate to make sure that you have enough time to close any non-conformities and for them to complete their processes to ensure continuous certification. Now, you will see lots of references here on the slide to ISO 17021, which is the accreditation requirement that CVs need to meet. So if you want, you can go and have a look at that in more detail, but basically it gives you the reference in terms of where these requirements come from. The other thing that's also worth noting is that the surveillance audits are linked to a calendar year. And even though they are called surveillance audits, they are also full audits to the scheme requirements. The benefit of having it in a calendar year is that you have the flexibility of moving that surveillance audit within the duration of the calendar year. It's also very useful when you have an organization that has multiple production lines, or maybe seasonal products that's only, that's operational during different times of the year. So you could go and see a specific topic, a specific product during the first surveillance audit, and then another one during the second surveillance audit. As I said, there are some limitations, especially with the first surveillance audit, in that you have to conduct that within 12 months after the date of certification. And this is because it is a specific ISO requirement. But in your subsequent cycles and for your second surveillance audits, you have the freedom to move those surveillances around in the calendar year. And then we also provide Fssc guidance documents, and this is to assist our organizations and also our CVs with implementing and applying the Fssc 22000 requirements. Now, here are some examples on the screen. So, for example, we have guidance documents on food offense and food fraud mitigation, and these are available in several languages. We also have guidance on food safety culture and transport tank cleaning, for example. So they are available as a free download on our website. Keep an eye on our Fssc 22000 website as we also add additional guidance documents as time goes on. Now, as Cora mentioned, The last bit of my presentation is about the integrity program. And this is a very important keystone, cornerstone of our scheme. It is the tool that we use to provide trust to the consumer goods industry, to make sure we have reliable audits, and that our partners, which is our certification bodies and our training organizations, meet our scheme requirements. And the detail of that you can see in part 4 of our scheme. So I'm not going to go into detail on that. But what I would like to show you is this picture about what is included in our integrity program. Now, obviously, this is just top level. There's a lot of detail behind this. But when you look at what we call our integrity umbrella, there are various key activities. For example, when we look at performance evaluation, we have an onboarding program. And this onboarding program we launched the beginning of last year. And the main reason for our onboarding program is also to help our new CBs joining the foundation on their journey in terms of making sure they understand what is the scheme requirements. So we provide them with training and also mentoring sessions. So to us, it's very important that our CBs understand the requirements, because they are the bodies that actually go out and verify and do the audits. We also then have a loyalty and performance program, and this is where we measure how well our CBs are doing in terms of meeting the scheme requirements. A part of that is through certification integrity, and we do that through various methods, but 2 of the main ones includes office assessments. So this is where we go to the office of the certification body, look at the management system and how they are running it, how they are showing that they're meeting scheme requirements. But we also have desk reviews, and this is where we do remote file reviews. And the frequency and the depth of both of these are based on a risk assessment and the CB's performance. Another key element is brand protection. Obviously, we treat complaints as very important. So we need to make sure that when we do get complaints, that they are handled in an appropriate manner. And we also look at serious events, because that also has a direct impact on our brand protection. Licensing is another element. Compliance breaches. Now, this is where certification bodies does not meet our requirements. And for that, there is a non-conformity management system in place. Because unfortunately, it does happen that in some cases, CBs does not meet our requirements, in which case we first give them a non-conformity, we give them the chance to address the issue. But unfortunately, in some cases, that's not always the case. And then we also have a sanction procedure, which sometimes means that we have to suspend the certification body, or in very severe cases, even terminate a license. We also have a procedure for exemptions, because even though we try and write the scheme to fit as many scenarios as possible, in some cases, there are situations that does not entirely fit within the scheme requirements, in which case the certification body can apply for an exemption, and then it is being reviewed by our integrity team, and also sometimes with the collaboration of the technical team. So apart from all the compliance, as I said, we're also very keen on helping people to understand the scheme better. So managing the knowledge levels, and we do that also through various ways. For example, we have an annual harmonization conference. We have several webinars. So apart from these public webinars, we also have specific webinars for our certification bodies, our accreditation bodies and training organizations. And we have a knowledge base where we have specific articles on topics and also a help desk. So our CVs can raise questions, or any of our partners can raise questions to the help desk, and then we try and respond to them as quickly as possible. So that is it in a nutshell. I hope you found it useful. But as Sam said in the previous bit, they will share the presentation with you afterwards, as well as the recording. So yeah, I will hand over now to Cor, who will discuss further the benefits of Fssc 22000.
Great, thank you, Fsse, and great presentation and great insights on a detailed matter on Fssc 22000. So yeah, I like to go to the end of the presentation and give you an overview and also a little bit of a summary of the main benefits that Fssc can bring to you. First of all, yeah, we said already ISO 22000, we believe it's a very, very strong standard for food safety management systems. So a number of benefits are for both for ISO 22000 and Fssc 22000. Because when you are ISO 22000 certified, that's already a great achievement. But I will show you later that Fssc can bring you some more benefits. But these are the equal benefits for both the management system approach we talked about, that harmonized structure that facilitates an integrated management system and combined audits. The fact that ISO standards are science-based. Very important is that ISO 22000 and the Fscc, of course, covers the Hesse principles from the Codex fully. And that's, I think, also one of the reasons that a lot of food regulators and food authorities are also very much in favor of ISO 22000 and the Fscc. Focus on continuous improvement. I think that is one of the principles of the management system standards in ISO. There's a very strong part that focuses on continuous improvement, like the Deming Circle, Plan, Do, Check, Act, but also the way you use root cause analysis to find the real cause of problems. So these are absolute strong tools for continuous improvement. Risk-based approach, you have to do your risk analysis, and not only the risk analysis or the hazard analysis for food safety, but also the revised management system standards require you to do a business risk analysis. And that also, I think, is a big improvement in the management system standards that even brings you to a higher level of control of your business risks associated with food safety, of course. Supply chain coverage. ISO 22000 is covering the food supply chain full. All the steps and all the activities in the food supply chain can use ISO 22000, and Fscc is covering them almost all. I showed you already in the previous part of this presentation. And I think what is also a characteristic of Fscc and also on ISO 22000, it's not a list of prescriptive requirements. It is more a standard and approach where you have to look how you have to do things. And organizations have flexibility to control risks in the way that is most appropriate for them. And we believe that's also a strong element. So these are a number of benefits equal for ISO 22000 and Fscc. But as said, if you choose for Fscc 22000, there are some additional requirements. The global recognition coming from that Global Food Safety Initiative. If you look at our list of certified organizations, you will find a lot of organizations choosing for Fscc, especially when they appreciate the management system approach. They choose for Fscc in most cases. We have a public available register. You can go to our website. You can find all those 29,000 plus organizations, and you can also do searches on that. You can find also what their scope is, the validity of the certificate. So all kinds of public information you can find there. Fsse explained it, reliable audits, integrity program, very important. And that's an additional benefit from Fscc because we have that reliable integrity program in place. The requirements for the Practicalities programs, that is mandatory for Fscc. It's not mandatory for ISO 22000, but we say it's a mandatory requirement to have a strong basis for your food safety management system and your PRPs. And we do a lot of collaboration. We have a good network with many major international associations that also helps, I think, the acceptance of Fscc around the world. And that additional requirements we have, it makes our scheme also flexible. As an example, when you looked at the Corona crisis, yeah, I think in that period we made some additional requirements, and we also gave some tools to ensure that that even in that difficult times where audits were difficult to perform, that there was a possibility to do partly remote audits and even full remote audits in some cases. So that shows how important those additional requirements are and the flexibility of our scheme. We also have a food safety management program that is also covered by what we call the International Accreditation Forum. That is the mother organization of all the accreditation forum, and we have an agreement with them. And yeah, I think it's important we have that development program for small medium enterprises. And you can find much more information on the website, and you can also contact us. But we believe strongly that we need to support all those great small medium enterprises, and this development program is there to support them. But also, if you are a big manufacturer or you're a manufacturer, you can use it for your suppliers. If you look at your vendor assurance program, of course, if they're able to go for a Gfsi recognized certification in one step, that's fine. But many of them might not be able to do that. And then our development program can help also your suppliers to meet the requirements for food safety and even grow in future to Fscc 20000. We have an addendum for the Food Safety Modernization Act, the legislation from the USA, and that identifies the additional requirements from FSMA on top of Fscc. So organizations that export to the US or are producing in the US, if they have Fscc, with this addendum, they can find the additional requirements, and you can ask your certification body to do a review. And you don't get a recognition because, yeah, we are not recognizing legislation, and also the certification body not, but you get a statement that you meet the requirements, and you can use that as evidence to show to the food regulators, to the regulators that you meet those requirements. The 3-year certification cycle, making us more flexible, as Elsie said, and yeah, the non-profit foundation character and keeping the fees as low as possible. I think that's also what we see as a role. As I said, the development program is even without any fees for the certified, for the organizations that want to be assessed and approved. So we don't ask for any fee there. Okay, I like to go to the end. I think these are a number of organizations that using Fscc and are happy with the benefits for a long time. And you remember, you will recognize these brands being more the larger organizations. But yeah, it's not all about the large organizations. We are having more small organizations than large organizations. And we're just as proud on them. And we just want to do as much for them to support them. And if you look at our register, you find many, many national organizations, smaller organizations using Fscc. And I think what's also important is to give you an overview. I said we do a lot of international collaboration with the GMOs and food industry associations. Without going in detail, you find here an overview of several organizations with whom we collaborate. Some of them we even have memo of understandings. And regularly you find on our website news items or articles. We announce this kind of collaborations, or we like to keep you updated. So keep an eye on our website, and you can also have a subscription on our newsletter. And our newsletter is free, and it also gives you a lot of great information. Last but not least, we have a number of additional solutions, details on the website, or contact us or contact one of our representatives. Our development program, I explained it already, small, medium enterprises. There is a specific addendum for organizations active in transport and storage, but specifically in temperature-controlled refrigerated delivery services. And that is growing very fast with home delivery of food, as you can imagine. And there is a standard specifically for that activity. And we have an addendum that shows the additional requirements for this standard on top of Fscc. You can also use it to have an approval for this standard by using that addendum and asking your certification body for that. The addendum for FSMA, as I said, and we have what we say a QMS module, Fscc 22000Q, and that is already a start of facilitating integrated management systems, because with this module, you can add ISO 9000 to Fscc, and you will have an integrated quality and food safety management system meeting both standards. And now I think I'm really at the end of my presentation. I see there are many questions. Samantha, I hand over to you to answer some of these questions, please.
Thank you, Cor, and thank you, Elsbie, for this information, for this really nice presentation. Indeed, we have received quite a few questions, so let's see if we can answer a few. I've noticed a nice one. Elsbie, maybe you can answer this one. At the moment, the Fscc 22000 certification is per site. Would you consider implementing a multi-site certification?
Yeah, that is a good question. And actually, Fscc already offers multi-site certification, but we do limit it to certain categories. Now, the categories that it does apply to is farming, catering, retail and wholesale, and also storage and transport. And you might ask, well, why don't you just do it across the board for all of the categories? And the main reason is that Gfsi does not allow or accept multi-site certification except for category G. So we make the conscious decision because of our user base to allow multi-site certification, but then it is only in these specific categories.
Great, thank you, Elsbie. There was another one, I think, for you. It's a question about food waste. Would Fscc ever include the handling of food waste to address sustainability concerns? Is that something you can say? Yeah, is this a question you can answer or say something about?
Well, I can say that we are looking at it. We are actually part of a working group, an ISO working group, that's looking at food loss and food waste specifically. It's a very interesting initiative, but it is sort of still in the beginning phases. But we are closely aligned to that. As I say, we are part of that working group because obviously it's an important topic. Is how do you minimize food loss, because there's so many people around the world who does not have enough food, and then you have a lot of food waste on the other hand. So yes, we are definitely looking at that. I don't know if it will be ready for when we get to version 6, but yeah, we will do that as soon as we have something tangible, because we also believe that it's a very important topic.
Thank you, Elsbie, to giving us a sneak preview into the future. Maybe this is a nice question for you, Cor. Why are we not allowed to mention Fscc 22000 certified on product labels?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and we love to do that, of course. But if you look at Fscc 22000, it's a management system certification. So the certification body is not certifying products; they are certifying a system. And there are very strict rules on that, also from ISO, but also from the accreditation bodies, that you can then not pretend that a product is certified. A product certification exists, like CE marks or certain specific characteristics, like being halal. That is an example of product certification. Then you can put it on the product. But with certification like Fscc 22000, you talk about system certification. And then you cannot put it on the product. You can put it on your roof, you can put it on your walls, on your paper or your website, but you cannot put it on your product.
Thank you, Cor. And then another one, because we talked a lot about the benefits Fscc 22000 has to offer, but what is now the major difference between Fscc 22000 and other Gfsi recognized schemes? And I don't know if this is too detailed already, but how does food defense and food fraud in Fscc 22000 differ from other Gfsi schemes?
I'm happy to start with the first one shortly and then ask Elsbie to continue more in the details. But I think the biggest differentiator is absolutely using the ISO standards, using the ISO management system standards like ISO 22000. I think that is unique. That is a very specific approach And we believe that is one of the biggest differentiators and is appreciated by a lot of food organizations in the food supply chain. And then, yeah, I showed, I think, some other benefits also important, like the integrity program, also looking at our non-profit foundation approach. So these also are, I think, typical characteristics. But using that management system approach, I think, is one of the biggest differentiators. And Fsse, perhaps on food fraud, food defense.
Yeah, I think maybe to start off with, it's worthwhile to explain a little bit on how does the Gfsi benchmarking work, because like the question sort of indicates, there are various schemes that has Gfsi recognition. And we all have to have requirements on food fraud and food defense because it is a specific Gfsi requirement. But Gfsi, when they set out their requirements, it's sort of on a more broader level. They specify some of the minimum content that needs to be captured, but how we as a scheme owner go about and implement that, that is up to an individual scheme owner to demonstrate. So when you look at the food fraud and food defense requirements across the different benchmark schemes to Gfsi, you will find some similarities. And that goes back to the minimum requirements of Gfsi. But then because you're also dealing with different scheme owners, and I mean, we're all trying to differentiate ourselves a little bit from the others as well, we can add additional requirements on top of what Gfsi specifies. We can give it our own twist. So I cannot tell you exactly what is the differences off the top of my head, but I can tell you that there will probably be a large overlap in terms of the requirements because it is one of the specific Gfsi benchmarking requirements.
Thank you, Fsse, and Cor, of course, for answering these questions. There are still many more questions, but unfortunately, the time of our webinar is also up. What I can say is that this webinar has been recorded, and we will share the recording and the presentation later this week via email to all the people who have registered for this webinar. In this email, you will also find the registration link to our next webinar, which will take place on 7 July and is dedicated to the topic of food fraud. So all the information will be shared in the email. And then I noticed a few questions about food safety culture and the differences between version 5.1 and version 5, I assume. We have several guidance documents available on our website as well, and I will make sure to include a direct link to these to the scheme documents and the guidance documents, which you can download free of charge from our website. So thank you all. Thank you, Cor. Thank you, Fsse. I hope you found this webinar interesting, and we'll see you around. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.